All right, so we will move on and we'll have Mr. Mosier to come up and do his presentation on the 2023-2024 school year calendar.
Good evening, Mr. Mosier.
Good evening. President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth, members of the board, Dr. Bedell. I'm Bob Mosier, Chief Communications Officer, here to present the recommended 2023-2024 school year calendar as recommended by our calendar committee. This is an information item this evening, so no board action is required. Board approved policy IB sets out the process we are discussing this evening. It calls for the committee, whose members I will detail in a moment, to submit a recommended calendar to the board for consideration. Ultimately, the final decision on a school year calendar is that of this Board of Education. In a conversation with Dr. Tobin before the committee began its work, it was relayed to me that the board would like to review two calendars, one with a pre-Labor Day start and one with a post-Labor Day start. That is what I will present to you this evening. The timeline for this process is as you see here. Following tonight's presentation, we will put the calendars and a video of this agenda item online for the public to review and to offer comment. That comment period will run through December 2nd, and we will provide that input to the board for its consideration as it proceeds with a final adoption of a 2023-24 school year calendar on December 7th. The committee consists of 24 members whose roles include bargaining unit representatives, parents, students, staff members from key areas across our school system. We met on the evening of Monday, November 7th, and I have to tell you, this year's meeting had some of the most robust and interesting and thought-provoking conversation that we have had since I've been facilitating this committee. The committee starts its work with the calendar approved by the board for the current school year and makes changes as it reaches consensus on individual items. The prospective calendar contains the same holidays and breaks that are in this year's schedule. It also contains all of the closings required by state law that you see here. They were and always have been off the table in terms of discussions of potential changes. So before getting to a preference on a pre-Labor Day or post-Labor Day start, the committee had substantive discussion on the items you see here. These factors are important because the calendar should be, as your policy states, a document that supports the effective delivery of an instructional program. So I'd like to talk a little bit about these because, as I said, it was a pretty robust discussion. There was some pretty lengthy discussion about the need for consistency of a date to start the school year. I can tell you in our office, we got lots of calls in early August about we thought school was starting after Labor Day, but it's starting before Labor Day, and that seemed to be the case among schools and parents as well. We talked also a lot about the effectiveness or lack thereof versus the inconvenience of the partial days for parent-teacher conferences, and I'll get to more of that in a minute. And then there was a discussion of something that hasn't come up in a couple of years, but did come up this year about developing a second calendar more than a year in advance. Those of you who've been on the board for a while know that we used to do this as a practice. It would serve as a tentative document, and then the board would come back and formally approve it the next fall, and it has helped in parent planning. The committee also discussed these items. The increased need for professional development for teachers. We have a drastic increase in the number of conditionally certified teachers this year, 32% more than last year. And so particularly our folks in curriculum instruction talked about the need for increased professional development there. And the potential to provide a non-student PD day for elementary and middle school teachers, which I'll go through in a minute. As you know, high schools go 180 days because we close on the day of their graduation. Elementaries and middle schools go 181 days. So that was a discussion we had. And then finally, a discussion that this board had last year about the last work day before the school year, where traditionally before last year, before a motion that the board approved last year, would be a non-teacher work day, and custodians would be able to do that last minute stuff. So we had lots of discussion about that. Ultimately, the committee made two key changes. One is to recommend eliminating the 3 partial day parent-teacher conference days. They were deemed relatively ineffective and largely disruptive, both to school operations and to the lives of parents. So that's recommendation 1. Before I get to recommendation 2, there was some significant discussion about the varying ways that are now available for schools to conduct parent-teacher conferences, right? Virtual and other things. We have two principals on the committee, and they talked about the ways that their teachers reach out to parents earlier in the school year in ways that are more effective than those days. And the second was to put in that elementary and middle school professional development day, as you see here, and leave high schools in session. The committee left it to staff to figure out what day that was. We landed on November 1st. That is a Wednesday, but when I circulated that back through the committee, the elementary folks in the committee were elated because that, of course, is the day after Halloween, and therefore young trick-or-treaters would not have to get up and go to school. So I offer that for you. With that settled, we turn to the pre and post Labor Day start. Vast majority of people on the committee want the pre-Labor Day start for reasons that include these. The post-Labor Day start ends too late in the calendar that you have before you. It ends the 24th of June, which should strike you as familiar because that's the day school ended last year. It also, because of the way June falls, would bring students back for 2 half days on the day after Juneteenth. And I don't want to overlook the last bullet, the last two bullets, because while we often talk about summer and all that stuff, the June 24th date causes some really big issues for the Office of Student Data in terms of closing out records and closing out grades and those kinds of things, and it really does create some issues there. The pre-Labor Day start also allows for almost all of that staggered start that we have to get out of the way, and so students start, most of them, full days when after Labor Day concludes. I did a quick counting, so if you look at last year, school ended on the 24th of June, and when we started this year, that was a 66-day summer. So if school is scheduled to end on the 16th of June this year without accounting for any of the virtual days of instruction, right, without any adjustments for weather, if you started pre-Labor Day, it would be 76 days of summer. So I offer that up for you. And then the committee had two recommendations. The first one, incredibly strong and unanimous, one of the very few unanimous things that we have on the committee, and that is the consistent date on which to start school from year to year. As I said, there was significant discussion about that, and everyone agreed with that, and agreed with the year ahead process, so allowing the calendar committee to do that. We could certainly do that this year. The plan would be, as we discussed it in the committee, this board would approve a calendar in December. We would then take it and adapt it for next year and bring it back to you at some date over the next couple of months, and you would approve it as a tentative calendar, realizing that you could make changes again next fall. So as I said at the outset, this is the second of 4 steps in this process, and so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have tonight, and then we will see you again on December 7th after we have public comment for that.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Just a reminder to members, if there are any series of things to ask, the first round is for questions and the second round is for comments. So, Ms. Schalheim, I see your light.
Yes, I have some questions around AP, IB, and then also certification tests, especially as we get into blueprint. Certification tests are important. So about the scheduling of those, are we responsible for scheduling those, or other bodies responsible for scheduling those, and where do they land in the mix of things every year?
Sure. So thank you for the question. Let me take them one by one. So AP is the dates of AP exams are totally out of our control. They are set by the College Board. They are the first 2 full weeks in May. So this year they are May 1st and May 8th. Next year they are May 6th and May 13th. Likewise, IB is out of our control. Those dates are set by the IB office. And they are generally the last part of April or the first week in May and last for approximately 3 weeks. The CTE exams are a mixed bag. Those that are offered by outside agencies, those dates are set by those agencies, so we don't have control over those. The ones that we can offer, I'm told by our CTE office, we schedule those in the quarterly exam window, quarterly assessment window in the 2nd and the 4th marking period, so at the end of each semester.
Thank you. And as a follow-up question to that, the ones that are, the CTEs that are out of our, the CTE certifications that are out of our control, are those generally April or May? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't, but I can find out for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, appreciate it. That was all my questions.
If I can just
Yeah.
add to that, and we'll find out about it, but at least during my time of supervising CTE programs, most of those assessments generally don't go into June. They don't go deep into June. They're usually towards the end of May. Maybe you might find something that falls in during the first week of June. But most of those type of assessments like IB, AP, most of them generally are done by the end of May. And I know in my former school district, because we were doing commencements May 17th, 18th, some of our kids who actually had their high school diplomas still had to come back the following week to take IB exams because they were going into the later part of the year. And I think what I'm believing we're able to accomplish here is to have all of that done before a kid even has a commencement. I'm hoping. So
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going with those questions.
Thank you. Ms. Corkadell.
Thank you, President Tobin. I guess my question would be, if I could, it's not a very specific one, but, you know, we always go back and forth with the partial days and the whole days off for staff development. And not talking about parent-teacher conferences. That's a whole conversation in and of itself. But would you mind taking a couple minutes and going back over some of the merits of each and a little bit more expansion on your recommendations as it surrounds that?
In terms of professional development for staff?
Yes, as in what's the best interest? What are some of the barriers? Like, are we talking about, you know, days of, you know, of their employment that they're active versus like how we get some of
Right,
these
so our
recommendations?
teachers are contracted to work 191 days. So from the first day before school that they come in to begin setting up their classrooms and that kind of stuff, we count 191 days, right? So the holidays don't count and that type of stuff. So a 2-hour early dismissal would allow you for 3 hours because of the length of their workday of professional development in the afternoon. That's what we do on those Project Unity days, as an example. So what this model would create is a day for elementary and middle school teachers. Curriculum instruction would tell you that's not enough, to be perfectly honest with you, that they'll take anything they can get, right? I mean, so it would create that day. We probably would not use all of that day for professional development, and there is some research and discussion, and Dr. McMahon and Mrs. Jackson and Dr. Bedell can certainly speak to this way better than I, but that a half a day of more impactful professional development is better than a full day, right, of less. And so what we talked about in the committee, though it wouldn't be our decision, would be on that November 1st day, a half a day of PD for teachers at the elementary and middle school levels, and then teacher workday the other half of the day, right, which would allow teachers to catch up on assessments and those kinds of things.
So as a follow-up to that, as we're planning those out, are the impact, I mean, from my seat as a former parent of recent of the school system, in part is that by always having an early dismissal as opposed to a late start, it impacts some of the academic opportunities of the morning-only kids. And as we move closer into preschool environments and that pre-K learning, and it's continue to expand that, what impacts does that have proportionate to these recommendations?
So this recommendation removes 3 of the early dismissals. It doesn't add any more in anywhere. So we're going from 15 partial days to 12.
Okay.
But secondly, all of our pre-K now is full day. So we don't have morning only pre-K anymore or afternoon only pre-K anymore. I believe I have that right, correct?
And that would
And
include.
it's ECI that is morning only, right? And that's a small number of those.
Okay, but some the most impactful, I would argue. But okay, yeah.
But so this recommendation would eliminate 3 of those adversely impactful days that you're discussing.
Okay.
And replace it with that one day where there's no school for anybody. Your other option is you dig into the days that teachers come back before students come back, and there are 6 of those in this calendar. There are 6 in this year's calendar. You
Well,
could look at those, but some of those are, the use of some of those are dictated by the negotiated agreement with the Teachers Association.
correct. And we're already having a desire for more hours, even to the impact of our facilities management. Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no more lights, I think that's it. So we will take this under consideration, and we'll be revisiting it for a vote at a later meeting. So thank you, Mr. Mosier, and thanks always to the committee. I know this is a lot of work, and we truly appreciate what they're doing. Thank you.